An important story, but it's not the main story. P, patience and pay attention. So we have patience sometimes, but we miss things because we're not paying attention. Patience is not one of our best virtues. We have instant gratification syndrome. God is much more interested in making sure that you are equipped with virtues that last an eternity. Now, this is a story within a story. A story within a story is a literary device in which one story is told during the action of another story. The inner stories are told either simply to entertain or more usually to act as an example to the other characters. In each case, the story often has symbolic and psychological significance for the characters in this outer story. There is often some parallel between the two stories, and the inner story is used to reveal the truth in the outer story. Marianne Beavis of St. Thomas More College says, this story is intercalated. This means inserted. That's my big word for the day. This story appears in all three synoptic gospels. Synoptic gospels are the gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke in the New Testament. Since the 1780s, the first three books of the New Testament have been called the synoptic gospels because they are so similar in structure, content, and wording that they can easily be set side by side to provide a synoptic comparison of their content. Mark speaks about this woman in 10 out of 23 verses. The book of Matthew didn't give her much attention. She received 3 out of 9 verses. The book of Luke, she didn't get much attention. She received 6 out of the 17 verses. Yet we have made this story our anthem in life. If I could touch the hem of his garment, I will be healed. Y'all know how y'all were acting when they sing that song. Now, some ministers and scholars label her story in relationship to Jairus. Story was an unwanted interruption. But I want to say to you, in my short period of seminary studies, but a long life, God has shown her to me that he was providing a testimony. This unclean woman came through the crowd and touched Jesus' cloak. She was at a last resort attitude. He felt his power released. He stopped and asked, "Who touched me?" Now the disciples immediately says, "Everybody's pushing around you. We all jammed up here just pushing. Who? Why? What makes you want to ask, who touched me?" He looks and he sees the woman who touched him. She has an unworthy attitude because she was hiding. And he begins to have a conversation with her about her life and why she came. She had a confessing attitude. Now you know that Jairus was standing there waiting while Jesus was having this long conversation with this woman, while his daughter was dying. Now, let's be honest. They didn't reveal Jairus' thoughts, but let's imagine that he was impatient. His daughter is in critical condition, while Jesus is conversing with this insignificant woman. His daughter could die while he's talking to her. Now, let's get real. If it had been you, you must don't know who I am. I hold a high position in church. I've been in this church all my life. Every time the church is open, I'm here. This woman doesn't even go to church. What did she do that I did not do? When I saw you, I bowed down to you. She snuck around and touched you from the back. I came boldly before you and told you my needs, she walked away. So why are you helping her right now and not me? Why do I have to wait? Talk to her later. I need you right now. Everybody's waiting back at the house to see what you're going to do for my daughter. I told them you were coming. I need you right now. My daughter is dying. Lord, my bills are overdue. I'm about to lose my house. I have no money. My health is getting worse. I'm going to be homeless. I'm too old to have a child right now. I'm still single. I'm going to be homeless. I didn't get that promotion again. My child is still hanging around with the devil. I see how you bless Sue, and she doesn't even go to church. With that attitude, you miss God's response. With that attitude, you miss the testimony. Jairus stood there saying nothing. Remember, he requested Jesus to lay hands on his daughter. The woman touched his cloak. Verse 34 said, Jesus said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." She was a believing attitude. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. Jesus told her, your faith has made you healed. This interruption was a prevention of misconception. It's not the touch, but it's your faith. In Luke 18:40-43, Jesus asked the man, "What do you want me to do for you?" "Lord, I want to see." Jesus said to him, "Receive your sight. Your faith has healed you." So when you pray, please keep in mind that your request will have to be in line with the goal God has for you. Faith does not change the will of God, but faith does influence the activity of God. Mark 1:40-42 says, a man with leprosy came and begged him on his knees, "If you are willing, you can make me clean." Out of compassion, Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. "I am willing, be clean." The Bible teaches us that there's a connection between praying in faith and God's supernatural activity. Now remember, this inner story has a symbolic and psychological significance for the characters in the outer story. Symbolic. Jairus had a daughter. Jesus referred to the woman as daughter. Nowhere else in the Bible does he refer to anyone else as daughter. Jairus' daughter was 12. She had issues for 12 years. Jairus was desperate, and so was the woman. The psychological significance is they both were first desperate and then hopeless. Faith not touch brings about healing. Jesus said to her, "Your faith has made you well." Believers, do not concentrate on how God is going to do it. Be confident that he is going to do it. I want to say to you that this inner story also affects you. You are an inner story for someone's outer story. You are someone's testimony in their desperate situation. We are at times called to be an interruption. Somebody in your life, pathway, belief is weakening. And you have the testimony to give them strength. Don't be a hindrance in someone's development, but be an enhancement in their development. I'll tell you another story. 2 weeks ago, Miss Ernie and I went to a Girl Scout trip to San Antonio. I was tired because I had been up doing papers all night. I had a paper due Thursday night. Then Pastor sent an email out wanting 4 more papers. Now, I mind you that I was leaving at 6 o'clock Friday morning. I had a 10 to 15 page paper due in my class Thursday night. Pastor wanted 4 more papers before 5 o'clock Saturday. So when I called Miss Ernie, I told her I had some papers due. Now, I didn't tell her, well, I'm not going to tell you what I told her about Pastor, but I told her that she was going to have to drive to San Antonio because I was going to be up all night long. So when we left on Friday morning, I had 1 paper left for Pastor. I had already started on it, and I was going to take a chance that the internet in the hotel was going to work. We arrived in San Antonio. We went to our various locations, SeaWorld, Alamo, the mall, dinner. By the time we got back to the hotel, I must admit I was tired, but I had papers to do. So I stayed up and worked on that 1 paper because it was due by 5 o'clock Saturday. Woke up with a few more hours of sleep. We walked to breakfast. We walked to our next destination. We walked to lunch. By the time I got back to the hotel, it was around about 2 o'clock. Now, I remind you that I had little sleep, and I was tired. So when I got to my hotel room, opened the door, and the bed had not been made. That means the house cleaning person had not yet arrived. I had an attitude. Remember, I was tired, and I had little sleep. So I sat on my bed, pulled up my computer, because I had to push the send button by 5 o'clock. Miss Ernie, she laid across her bed and rested. And a few minutes later, someone knocked on the door. It was a housekeeping person. Now remind you, I was tired. And I had a few hours of sleep. And she came and said, "Are you ready for me to make up your bed?" I said, "No." Miss Ernie said, "No." And as she stood there, waiting to clean up something, I said, "Why don't you go in the bathroom?" She did. And I began to work on my paper that was due by 5 o'clock to Pastor. Now, as she was cleaning up the bathroom, heard this groaning noise, and it got louder. And I looked at Miss Ernie, and Miss Ernie looked at me. And I said, "Are you all right in there?" And she said, "Yes, I have a back injury." I said, "Oh, well, I understand how that is." And then she decides to come out the bathroom, into the room, and begin to tell me her story. Now, remind you, I'm tired. I don't have much sleep, and I got a paper to send by 5 o'clock. So as she began to tell the story, I began to listen. And she said that she injured her back by falling down a flight of stairs. She was pushed. She said that she had a herniated disc, level 4 and 5. The doctors were talking about surgery, sticking some long needles in her back. Now, she already doesn't want to do this, but she has been praying and has accepted whatever God has planned for her situation. Now, it's about 3 o'clock. And I realized as she spoke that this was my opportunity to be a testimony. I told her that I too have a back injury. I too failed because I was pulled down. And I too have a herniated back, level 4. Now, I'm just trying to tell you that sometimes You are a testimony to someone's desperate situation. I told her that God healed me of my pain. I didn't say my back injury. I said my pain. And I told her that Ernie and I were members of Willard Avenue Baptist Church, and if she would mind if we pray for her. And she said, I don't care what church you belong to. I want you to pray for me. And we did. God blesses us, and we need to share it with someone else. You see, when some of the people who were at Jairus' house came to him and announced that his daughter was dead, this left, he said, leave the teacher alone. Don't be afraid anymore, Jesus said. Only believe. Be is believe and be blessed. Jesus recognized the father's desperation turned to hopelessness. His faith was faltering, but it is through faith his daughter will be healed. Jesus said, don't be afraid, believe. Jesus recognized his anxiousness over the situation and said, don't be afraid, believe. Jesus heard the news of his only child's death, and he said, don't be afraid, believe. Jesus knows your doctor's report. He says, don't be afraid, believe. Jesus knows about the layoffs. He says, don't be afraid, believe. Jesus sees your child, and he has their hand. He says, don't be afraid, believe. You asked God, and he answered. Be patient and pay attention for his signs. Wait on his results. Believe in his word. Isaiah 55:11 says, so shall my word be that goes forth from my mouth. It shall not return to me void, but it shall accomplish what I please, and it shall prosper in the thing for which I sent it. After Jesus ministered to this woman, Jesus went to Jairus' house. He was met by some grumbling and unbelieving people. They believed she was dead. They even laughed at Jesus when he said they were asleep. I'm going to let you know, some of your associates, your friends, and family are grumbling and unbelievers, and there are obstacles to your healing and your blessings. Jesus removed them, and he healed his child. Let me say it again. After he waited, as Jesus ministered to the woman, the unbelievers were removed. Jairus' child was healed. Now we could look at Jairus standing in silence, saying, Lord, I don't mind waiting. In Matthew 21:22, Jesus said, speaking to the disciples about the withered fig tree, all things you ask in prayer, believing, and you will receive. Lord, I don't mind waiting. Hebrews 13:5 says, you said you would never leave me or forsake me. Lord, I don't mind waiting. You've always been faithful to me, Lord. Lord, I don't mind waiting. I read what you did for Daniel. Lord, I don't mind waiting. I read what you did for Job. He lost everything. Lord, I don't mind waiting. I've seen what you did for my parents. Lord, I don't mind waiting. I've seen what you've done in my family. Lord, I don't mind waiting. As I look back on my life, Lord, I don't mind waiting. Lord, I've been in this church where it started with 13 people. It's over 9,000. Lord, I don't mind waiting.
don't mind waiting on the Lord. I don't mind waiting. I don't mind waiting. I don't mind waiting on the Lord. I don't mind waiting. I don't mind waiting. I don't